And we're back. Hello.
Hi guys. So, crikey.
What a crikey, as my
Yeah.
3-year-old niece would say.
So we're back.
Hey.
It's been a while, and it's been a day. It's been a day on the old coronavirus lockdown blog sort of front. I'm on the hard stuff. This has got caffeine in it. Like that's the type of day I've had. God, this blog's changed a bit, hasn't it? Like,
Yeah.
I was down in the wine at the start of this one, but Bumpy's not allowing that. But yeah, I've been off the caffeine almost entirely for old Prego malarkey, but felt I needed some caffeine for this one, and that's the hardest substance I can reach for now. Bloody hell. It's been a day. So yeah, if you haven't been watching the news, or if you are further afield and not in the UK, bit of a turn up for the books that everybody in the world could see coming. But yeah, so new lockdown rules coming into effect basically immediately, which have essentially cancelled a lot of people's Christmases, which was already quite an impeded Christmas anyway. But yes, so just minding our own business, going about our daily tasks today, and I noticed that there was a press conference happening, which normally, like as you know, if you're regular viewers, I tend to be quite on top of these things, and I tend to know that there's one coming and plan to watch it, but this one caught me off guard. But it caught everyone off guard because it wasn't announced beforehand. It just kind of went, oh guys, we've got some stuff to tell you. So this was Westminster having a chat, so it was old Bojo. And his usual cronies, Chris Whitty and the other chap whose name entirely escapes me. But
Not a memorable man.
Neither of them are particularly charismatic men, it has to be said. Yes, so I caught that one first, and then I caught, oh, shit's happening in Wales too. So
Shit had already been happening in Wales, to be fair.
Shit was already happening in Wales.
Mark Drayford had made announcements, when was it, a couple of days ago, that it could no longer be 3 households, only 2 for Christmas, which is already disrupting people's Christmas plans, and he was getting a lot of shit for it, for A, for being strict, and B, for being strict too late.
Yes.
And now Boris has come along, even later and even stricter.
Yeah.
And Wales have kind of tried to catch up again as well. So
basically, there's a lot to unpack, but the situation was up until today. So we'll talk about Wales. Wales was going into a strict lockdown from the 28th. So for a long time, we've been sort of hearing mumblings about, well, we need to have a 4-nation approach to Christmas, and that's what we're going to try for, because people obviously have family all over the country. Borders don't really mean much when you, like, if you live in Newport and you've got relatives in Bristol, you're going to want to cross the border for Christmas. And so kind of they're like, we kind of need to have universal rules across the whole country because everybody needs a lovely Christmas, don't they? Because that's the most important thing right now. And so basically everybody had been told, well, England had slightly different rules to us anyway, but initially it was 4 households could mix for 5 days and travel for 5 days around Christmas. I think from the 23rd to the 28th, you could mix, but they were saying do just treat that like your big bubble. So that doesn't mean you can see whoever you like over those 5 days, but those households can mix without social distancing and kind of behave as normal. Then, like, the numbers started to go up to varying degrees all over the place. Wales is actually having a really shocking time of it right now. It's one of the worst places in the UK. It's really staggering figures. And so in light of that, Mark Drakeford, who's our First Minister, has sort of gone, sorry guys, but we got to make this stricter. So strip that back to 2 households, same 5 days. You could also include a 3rd household if they lived alone because of sort of compassionate reasons. In light of that, our personal Christmas plans had changed, because obviously they've changed a few times. Everybody's plans have changed a few times over this year, I think it's fair to say. So originally, back in the day when we sort of thought, oh, this will all be done and dusted by Christmas, we were planning to go to Bedfordshire to spend Christmas with Chris's family. That has been scuppered for a while. So the new plan was going to be that we were going to spend it with my family, who lived just around the corner. And because of sort of the living arrangements, we were actually able to sort of have all of my immediate family and my gran were all going to be legally allowed to be there under the rules when it was 4 households allowed to mix plus a single household, because my gran lives alone. One of my brothers lives with my parents anyway, and the other brother lives elsewhere, so that would have been 3 households plus the gran. Fine. Then that got stripped back to 2. And we just thought, well, we live together, we've got each other, we'll be the ones to bow out.
A house full of animals.
Yeah. It's not like I'm going to be boozing it up, although I am usually the instigator of the Christmas games, so they will have a poor Christmas without me. They'll probably be really relieved. I won't be making them play charades.
Yeah, we won't be invited back in again.
They were like, this is great. But yes, so we'd already decided to bow out, but that was sort of, Christmas was still largely happening for everybody. Now, today, they've gone, guys, we've got to change the rules, essentially, starting now. So they've gone, that lockdown that was starting on the 28th starts at midnight. And they announced this at about 5 p.m. today. And also, that 5 days of Christmas, nah. You can have one day. You can have Christmas Day. And that's it. So that's what's going on in Wales. But Wales was at least already kind of braced for Tier 4 restrictions from the 28th onwards, which is relatively full lockdown. Still a few bits and bobs going on, but largely stay the fuck at home, only do essential stuff. Essential shops are shut, no hospitality's open, all of that jazz. So we were all kind of braced for Tier 4, but we just thought we had a little bit longer before it kicked in. England, however, didn't have a Tier 4, but they do now. And those that are in Tier 4 are in it from tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. And they found that out today, again at around 5 p.m. So that's a lot of people this evening going, am I going to work tomorrow? We're a shop, are we opening up tomorrow? I guess we're not. But we're going to have to go in and do all the things that we need to. A lot of people getting a lot of news very short notice. And also they have changed Christmas plans as well to be Christmas Day only. And I think 3 households only, or is it 2 households only? But in Tier 4, if you are one of the Tier 4 areas, no mixing whatsoever for Christmas. Not allowed. At all. Other than support bubbles, which, again, support bubbles have been for people who live alone or who are vulnerable. Who need to be able to mix with people for compassionate reasons, be that physical or mental health or whatever. So basically, if you're in Tier 4, your Christmas is fucked, and you only found out that this evening and it comes into effect tomorrow. A lot of places are going to be in Tier 4. Interestingly, most of them are in the south. Up north, they've been going, guys, it's really bad up here for fucking months now. And Westminster, in their typical Westminster fashion, have been going, doesn't sound like an us problem. That sounds like a you problem. Let's blame Andy Burnham. Let's blame the Northerners. Let's just go, oh, well, fuck it. Same as when we were sort of saying, guys, we need to go into lockdown. We need some support. And they went, no. And then they had to put some areas in England in lockdown. And they went, oh, I guess we need to do some financial support then so that you can give businesses a fucking lifeline. So yet again... So it's all kicking off down south with their transmission rate, and it really is. And it's really been spreading. So they closed most of England down for basically November. It was from the start of November to the start of December, but basically most of November was a lockdown. And they were sort of saying, we thought that the lockdown, it did bring numbers down, but not to the extent that they thought it would. And then post-lockdown, they had sort of areas in Tier 3, and they were like, well, we would have thought that Tier 3 would bring things down more than it has. Turns out, they say, anyway, and I don't want to be one of those tinfoil hat brigade, but conveniently, a new strain, it's not convenient, it's decidedly inconvenient.
Yes, terrifyingly.
A new strain of COVID has been identified, which isn't... it seems to be basically the same in terms of if you catch it, your chances of being very ill or being hospitalized are about the same. Your immune response is about the same. All of the, basically, your experience if you catch it will be essentially what we were already braced for. But here's the kicker. It seems that it is much, much more transmissible. Early evidence suggests about 70% more transmissible than the existing virus that was already causing, I don't know if you've noticed, but bit of a stir. Quite a lot going on with that. Already seems quite transmissible. So 70% more transmissible is bad news biz, which I think essentially means that if you've got it, you're gonna spread it to everybody you come in contact with, almost regardless of, like, I think all of the existing measures are still good, but you need to basically it's you need to stay the fuck you need to stay away from people.
Schools and universities will be fun.
Yeah. Well, interestingly, that's why I sort of say conveniently, because the only reason I say this is convenient, it isn't, it's awful, is they've said, oh, it looks like this strain, like viruses mutate, that's not unheard of, that's why we have a different flu vaccine every year, like viruses do mutate, new strains come about. They say that this particular strain has probably been around and with us and in the population since about September, but has only recently been identified. But already, of tests that are coming back now, they're testing to see which strain it is, and already it's about sort of 60 to 70% in the affected areas are coming back as this new strain rather than the old strain, which suggests that it's much more transmissible than what was already widely circulating in the population. They say around about September, and also that's why the tier 3 restrictions weren't doing what they thought they would, and that's why spread is faster. It seems to me like that is a little bit convenient, only in that they can say, oh, it wasn't our fault that this has gone so badly out of control, guys. There was a new strain, what could we do? But actually it's like, well, you could have been stricter across the board for months, and even with a new strain, numbers would be down, and they're not. But they've gone bonkers. And yeah, and also that kind of coincides with the schools and universities going back, which caused basically that was the trigger for the second wave. Everything had gone down and down and down and down, and then September hit and everything started going up and up and up. So blaming a new variant, kind of convenient for maybe some bad decisions that were made there. But yes, so that's where we're at. And it's quite a lot to take. We've done it basically. It's only about 6:30 now, and we just kind of decided, let's just do our reaction straight away to this because it's quite a lot to take in. So haven't had time to do in-depth analysis of everything. I've literally just read the headlines, watched the news conferences, and gone, well, Jiminy crikey, this is big.
Yeah.
The thing that most perturbs me at this stage is, for weeks, literally weeks, we and many people have been saying, guys, numbers are going up. You know this, regardless of what's going on with new strains or any of that. You know that numbers are going up. Doesn't seem wise to have a relaxed Christmas. And yet, very much particularly Westminster, have been sort of saying, no, we're not going to cancel Christmas. Like, it would, I think Boris's own words were, it would be inhuman to do so. So promising, like, it's all right, well, we'll have this Christmas and we'll deal with the aftermath afterwards, basically.
Despite everyone saying there's already going to be a spike in January.
Yeah, everybody's sort of going, I don't think this is a good idea, guys. The scientists sort of, like, medical journals, scientists all across the board have kind of been going, guys,
well,
stop it.
Making exceptions for festivals or festivities isn't following the science, is it?
No.
It's not at all.
And particularly ones that you're going to relax travel measures, so you're going to have everybody in the country travelling across the country. Because that's going to mix it from high prevalence areas to low prevalence areas. It just seems unwise. So they've been saying that they won't cancel Christmas, they won't do it. And now, today, to change the rules, but to change them with such immediate effect.
And with such short notice between now and Christmas.
Yeah, basically that worries me far more than if they'd just done this a few weeks ago. It makes me feel like, what new data have they got from the latest meetings? Because they've been saying fairly adamantly, no, we've drawn the line in the sand, we're not cancelling Christmas, we'll just go strict afterwards. And for them to change their minds at sort of the 11th hour makes me feel like, ah, shit, this now feels bigger and scarier than it would have anyway. And I will be honest, it is big and scary. Like this, we're making light of it, to be honest. And
this 70% super spreader idea
yeah,
is like this thing that we didn't want to catch, but we've been washing our hands and putting our masks on and trying to social distance where we can, is because sometimes that is not always an option given to you if you're on public transport or things. But we've been doing all the right things and we're careful and we're sensible, so hopefully we're not going to get ill and we'll be okay. And now it's like
your chances of catching it have gone up.
Yeah, massively.
Doing everything we're already doing.
Yeah. That's
big.
It is, and it's
yeah, and that's quite hard to get your head around, because it's like it was already a fairly insurmountable foe that we were fighting. 70% is that's a big leap in how, because it was already fucking transmissible. Like, don't get me wrong, there are it's like, I'm no epidemiologist or virologist or any of that, but sort of just from reading what I can and sort of actually just trying to sort of listen to experts on this, there are certain diseases and illnesses that are far, far more transmissible than coronavirus. For example, measles is a very good example. Measles, it's airborne. It's very, like, I think the rate of people that you pass it on to is really high. It's sort of, I think it's sort of 8 or 9. So one person gets infected, you're expected to pass it on to 8 or 9 people, which is why you need everybody to be vaccinated. But that's a story for another day. And I think coronavirus, it was sort of 2 or 3 it was expected to be, which isn't great, but it's, you know, because it's not in the air in the same way, it's sort of in droplets which don't travel quite so far or quite so easily, it wasn't quite as bad. Once you get into adding an extra 70% on top of that, when you look at how many people are still catching this with measures in place, don't get me wrong, people are flouting the rules and there are people just being idiots anyway, but largely people have been reduced anyway, if not entirely, the amount of times they're mixing with people, the amount of possible opportunities to transmit the virus. And even with those measures in place that have been at least publicly quite strict, even with those measures in place, lots of people were still catching it. Add another 70% onto that, seems kind of like basically everybody who does get it is gonna pass it on to people.
I thought a thing in my head a minute ago that I don't even want to say out loud while this is filming, because it feels like maybe I'm being melodramatic and I don't want to say that on a public vlog and like potentially give people more anxiety than
You've
it's...
said it now though, haven't you?
No, I haven't, but like, I don't want to...
Do you want me to pause?
It's just... it's just... Well, we can talk about it afterwards. I just don't think... It's, you know, it's just... I mean, I'm not saying anything. I haven't got any knowledge, obviously. I'm just...
Just a gut feeling, gut reaction.
Yeah, just a thought in my head.
Oh, I want to know what it is now.
What, do you want to pause it?
I'm going to pause it,
right,
and you just have to judge by my face how I look afterwards. Right, ready? This is my happy face.
Okay.
And I'm back, and my face isn't too shell-shocked.
That's okay. Just us sharing our own anxieties.
Yeah, you didn't need to know them.
Yeah, I have anxiety that I will share.
Okay.
Is that and this is just like, you know, we found out this information an hour ago and I'm just spiraling.
You get to watch it in real time!
Hey!
Yay!
Is like, I work a job that involves leaving the house, and because of where I live and the place that I work not being the same place, I have to get on public transport.
It would be weird if we lived in Specsavers, wouldn't it?
It would be weird. I wasn't going to name them, but okay.
I think you've mentioned where you worked before. But...
Yeah, I know, but like with this, I don't know. I just felt a little bit like, I don't know. But yes, with having to travel and commute, that feels a bit scary. And you, Ellie, heading towards her 3rd trimester of pregnancy, making her more vulnerable to this virus before it was a super spreader.
I'll clarify that in a minute, but
okay.
Yeah, finish your point.
And just going, I don't want to be going in and going...
I don't want you on public transport. Your work actually isn't the thing that concerns me, because in work you're in full PPE.
That's true.
You've got social distancing measures.
Yes, we are very
and
well. They are
at least if somebody is flouting the rules in your work, you have got the opportunity to say, can you stand back, please? Can you do X, Y, or Z, please? It's more mingling with the public
as the
on your way
company's
to and
name
from.
has been mentioned. We will re-emphasise they're taking lots of precautions, full PPE, doing everything they can to look after staff and customers, hand sanitizer everywhere. But it's getting there and back. It's walking through crowded town centres or kind of getting on public transport, having to be on trains or train stations where social distancing is a practical impossibility.
Yeah, I have to say I'm not enthralled with that continuing to be the case, but because it is sort of a healthcare setting rather than just a retail setting.
It's not one of the non-essential businesses that might be closed from tomorrow. So that is what it is, but that is giving me a bit of anxiety.
Yep.
So
me too, right there with you, Babs.
That's fun.
Yeah. Yeah, so to further general anxieties, well, I'll just clarify on that clinically vulnerable thing. Now, pregnancy-wise, there is no particular evidence that suggests that being pregnant makes me any more likely to catch COVID. And I've basically started shielding last couple of weeks. I was already kind of reducing social contact, but I've kind of gone full shielding now. So I'm not leaving the house really, not doing anything social, not going anywhere at all. But obviously there's only so much I can do, and there is an element of, well, I'm doing all of that, but Chris is still going to work, so like he could, do no fault of his own, catch it and bring it home, and then I catch it. But at least, to be honest, again, I'm not desperately worried so much for me. I don't want to pass it to anybody I care about. But I was sort of reading up on pregnancy and COVID, and partially just as a precautionary measure, really, they've said, due to just pregnancy in general being quite hard on your body, they advise pregnant women to consider themselves clinically vulnerable, and so to basically treat them not like the very highest level of people who absolutely had to shield, but to take particular precautions, which to begin with they're sort of saying that just seems precautionary and sensible, as just generally speaking, if you're pregnant and you catch anything, it can hit you a bit harder than it would have otherwise, just because your body's under a bit more strain and pressure. There is mounting evidence, not a huge amount, and it isn't enough for me to be like, oh my god, like this is really terrifying, but enough for me to be like, oh shit, which is that it does seem that once you're in your third trimester, there is slightly higher chance of being hospitalized if you get COVID, and of those hospitalized there's a slightly higher chance of going into intensive care. That might again just be down to the fact that your body's having to work a bit harder than it does anyway, and it's sort of got less reserves to fight off anything. There's the minimal but some evidence of actually the evidence for how it affects baby is good. Babies that have caught COVID from their mothers who had it when they were born recover almost immediately after birth and test negative, and it doesn't seem to have had any long-term effects on babies who have COVID, so that's good, but obviously not so great if I'm in intensive care. So fingers crossed that's not the case, but it does give me enough food for thought to be like, I should be careful, because again, as with everything in all of this, like, you can spiral into worrying about everything, and that there's too much, too big. So I have to minimise it down to things within my control. So therefore, I can't control whether Chris's work tell him to come in or not, and I can't control whether he goes to or from work, but I can control what I do. So I'm not going out and about, and I'm not inviting people over, and I'm not mixing with people, because that's within my control. So at least whatever happens, I can look back and go, I did what I could. And across the board, I think that's been our approach. Just same with you. You're not doing any other thing. You're going to work because you have to go to work. You've got no control over whether or not they tell you to go in. So you're going in because we need food in our bellies and pay our rent. So that's sort of essential. And I just kind of want everybody else to do that. Unfortunately, that's not what we're seeing. Lots of people, and I get lots of people are just at the fuck this now stage, and I get it. We're all sick of it, but doesn't matter. It's a virus. It's not like you can negotiate. Like, you've just got to keep doing the right thing because people might die. And people will die. And, like, I think that's to further everybody's anxieties. But one of the things in this, so to go back to the new variant of COVID, suggestion, like, it is new and they just don't have a lot of data on it as yet. I don't quite know what they're basing the 70% transmissibility rate on, other than probably some very clever maths that I don't understand, but I haven't had time to sort of, well, to be honest, it's only really just been announced, that 70% thing. The new variant was announced a couple of days ago, but the 70% thing, that's the first I've heard of it today, so I'll need to do some background reading on that. But the thing that they also said, there's no evidence to suggest that it won't respond to the vaccine. Now that sounds very good, but there's also going to be no evidence to suggest that it does, because it's new and it wasn't, because on giving the vaccine to all the test subjects over the last year, it wasn't circulating in the population for people who were vaccinated to not catch the new variant. So they can't really know if the new vaccine, which is 90+% effective against the strain that we knew about, that's all great. But if this new strain becomes the prevalent strain, they can't really know yet, surely, if the new vaccine is as effective against the new variant, because there won't be data yet. Because the strain is new. People were only getting vaccinated with this sort of en masse from a few weeks ago, and you have to have 2 doses of the vaccine to be fully immune anyway. So they can't really know yet if this new strain is held back by the current vaccine, as far as I can tell. But that is, as I say, I'm not an epidemiologist. There might be good science behind the reasons why they think it is, based on the structure of the virus. It's very similar. It works the same way. It's not like it's an entirely different beast. It's a different strain of the same virus. But I worry, therefore, that maybe the vaccine's not going to be the shine, because if they're saying that now the new variant is becoming the prevalent variant very quickly, if we've got a vaccine against an old strain, it's like giving you last year's flu jab. Not that great against this year's flu. So that's fun. That's some food for thought.
Gosh.
So yeah, hopefully there will be more information that will come out about that, and more scientists will do whatever tests they can do on that. And if this new strain is as transmissible as it is, it probably won't be long before they can tell from the people who've had the new vaccine whether or not they still catch. Because I guess if people who are vaccinated don't catch the old strain but do catch the new strain, we'll know about that quite quickly because the prevalence is so high. So that's a good thing. So that's just me supposing out loud, really. Excuse me. But that's another concern in a long list of concerns.
My parents are in one of the tier 4 areas of England.
Yep.
And that, I'm now thinking, might affect their Christmas plans, because I think both my sisters were going there for Christmas. I might be wrong about that. It might be one of them or other of them was going to their other in-laws. But yeah, that's now too many households.
Well, yeah, in tier 4, no households mixing. So they're definitely, if they're in tier 4, they're not mixing with anyone. Definitely.
Oh, right, okay, right, yeah. So they are. So that has
affected their Christmas plans. Yep. Also, I should mention, now this has been, as far as I'm aware so far, only mentioned for England, but it may well be in the rules for Wales shortly as new information arises. But they have also said one of the rules, regardless of what tier you're in, they want you to stay local. There's good reasoning for that, because there's areas in England where they know this new strain is absolutely rife. There are other areas that don't have a lot of it, if any. If you're in, so I think Kent is Kent and sort of the southeast seem to be where it's doing its worst. If you live in Kent and you travel to, say, Yorkshire or Cornwall, where they don't have any of this, for Christmas, you're taking a new strain to somewhere where it isn't in the populace, and it's more transmissible, and you're spreading it around. So regardless of whether or not you're able to travel for Christmas on that one day, it may not be wise to do so. Just because it's allowed, having people, I think stay local should be nationally the rules. Also, I have to say, internationally speaking, if I were every other country on the planet, I would be immediately closing the borders to anyone in Britain, because the new variant of COVID seems to be currently a UK problem. So well done, us.
Hooray! Well beating. So, I mean, there's so many people who are going to have it so rough now. I feel so I'm feeling a lot of empathy for people who, like, basically, you know, we were going to go and visit my parents, and then we were going to go and visit Ellie's parents, and I don't know what's worse, like not being able to go and travel across the country and see the people you've not seen all year, or not being able to see your family when you know they're literally like around a corner.
Yeah.
Like,
it's less than a 5-minute walk. It's just like, they're
But-
right there.
but
Can I go and wave through the window?
as we keep sort of saying, you know, we've got each other, we're lucky, but like a couple of years ago, I was single, I was living on my own, I was, you know, and if under the previous restrictions I'd gone, well, I am allowed to travel around a 5-day period, and I'll be careful either side, and I've booked my megabus or my train or whatever, and I'm going to go home and I'm going to get to see my family that I've not seen all year, and you know, and all of these things, and then I get
Or you can
told
only travel on
5
the
days
day.
beforehand, oh, you've got to stay local and you can only travel on the day, and like even if I didn't have any other siblings, it was just me and my parents, and it wasn't too many households or whatever, and you're just going, right, so but I can't get from
You can't get from Cardiff to Bedford by public transport on the day and back. Nah.
I don't even know what public transport is available on the day, if any, and I certainly couldn't do it. I couldn't expect my parents to kind of drive me there and back. Like my parents have picked me up before. My dad's picked me up on like years ago, like on Christmas Eve, and
But then you have a few days,
dropped me back
don't
on
you?
like Boxing Day, I think.
Yeah.
Which is like,
That's a good egg.
he is a good egg.
Yeah.
But like that is, you know, 2 to 3 hours a trip, and then but he's got to do both legs of that.
Yeah.
So that's like about 5 to 6 hours.
Yeah, that's quite hard going.
That is, but you can't do that all on Christmas Day. Can you imagine? And
well,
then I'd be
10
there
hours
for,
of our Christmas minimum was spent in transit.
Yeah.
Happy Christmas.
And presumably like other terrible traffic as well,
Yeah.
because everyone else is trying to travel on Christmas Day.
Yeah, it's just not feasible.
But then I'd be plunged into a position of going, I'm having Christmas on my own, and I found this out with 5 days to go, so I haven't prepped for that. I haven't bought a turkey. I haven't, you know, got
and shops
food
are shut from tomorrow.
Shops are shut, so I can't go and treat myself to like a new video game, so I've got something to see me through the day. I mean, that sounds bleak, but you know what I mean? Like, something to kind of go, well, I'll cheer myself up with a present. Oh, no, I can't buy myself anything, and now it's gonna be a nightmare trying to get anything posted or delivered because of
everyone
circumstances.
doing the same.
So,
yeah.
it's all... And just, I've been telling, like, basically anyone who will listen for about the past fortnight, and under current guidelines, that's mostly just Ellie hearing the same opinions a lot.
Luckily, I share them and I go, yeah, a lot.
But it's
another thing.
It's recently been brought to my attention by certain people on certain Facebook groups that not everyone on the internet likes my opinions. As if I didn't know. And so imagine living with me. But I have been telling anyone who will listen.
It's a pleasure.
Like, don't say that like you're a hostage. It's a pleasure. Stop doing Morse code and you're blinking. Right, so don't read that. Listen to me.
I don't know Morse code.
But
honestly, I'm not here against my will.
that sounds. The more you protest, the worse it sounds.
I'm okay, guys. Honest.
I don't mind. I won't be seeing my family this Christmas. He wasn't going to let me anyway. But anyway, I have been telling. I've been saying to anyone who will listen, like, if you're going to go straight for Christmas, and we probably should, because that is what the sign is saying, it is much better to make that decision and lay out all the rules early, because if we knew in mid-November that the rules were going to be what they are now, that would suck, but we would get used to the idea, and people would have plans to prepare of like, right, well, we were going to go to mum and dad's, but we can't, so we'll make sure we've got the freezer stocked up, or normally we play a family game of Catan, but it's only going to be 2 of us, so maybe we by a 2-player game, or look into
Treat
what works
ourselves to
over Zoom.
something, yeah,
You know, or maybe, hey, Uncle Barry or whoever can't come now because of the restrictions, so maybe we all chip in and get him like an extra nice present, something he can do on the day, let him know we care. There's all these things you could do to make the situation more bearable, or kind of go, right, well, I can't go and see the family, but maybe I know someone in a similar position and we can be like our little bubble household over Christmas, or whatever it might be. Like, there's things you can prepare and figure out, and just mentally prepare yourself for the situation, whatever it is.
Yeah, it's so much worse this way around.
This has now been sprung on us with 5 days to go with people's plans. So everyone's going to be trying to stock up on extra Christmas stuff for their own house. Like, there's going to be a run on things in the shops, probably.
And everybody who made public transport travel plans,
like
all of those tickets are now useless because you're not allowed to travel.
To the trains and
are they going to be able to be refunded? Are you? Because then, realistically,
is the government, if they do get refunded, is the government going to underwrite that because those companies sold that in good faith?
No.
It's
of course they're fucking not. Have you seen what they've been doing?
No, but that's the point. It's a rhetorical.
It's just yet again.
And I hate to say
absolutely fucking shambolic.
Look, I hate to say I told you so. But I haven't seen many of you. But had I have seen you, I would have told you so.
Would have.
I would have done.
Yeah. That's the thing. It's been, and I think this is what it boils down to largely. And I don't want to put it all on Boris Johnson because there's a lot of people working around him that should have fucking dealt with this a bit better as well. But I think it is the price you pay when you are the kind of man he is, where you just don't want to you don't want to be the bad guy. So he tells people what they want to hear, and he'll stick to that because he doesn't like to be the bad guy, because ultimately he's a narcissist and he needs everybody to love him. And I think it does give me a slightly fucked up sense of satisfaction, actually, that Mark Drakeford, our First Minister, I think largely has handled this pretty well as could be expected, and actually the Welsh Government, it's not just him. And they've made recently some very unpopular decisions, and all the gammons on the internet have all been going, oh, well, this is why we need to abolish the Senedd, Boris Johnson's doing so much better job. And no, he's fucked this up worse. Mark Drakeford wanted us to go into a stricter lockdown much earlier, but Westminster wouldn't release any financial support to allow us to be able to do so and to close businesses. For the third time, the Welsh Government has now released more funds to businesses that have been affected by lockdown and that are going into Tier 4. So this affects my business, actually. I haven't had them yet, but money is coming. Not a huge amount, but for a small business with small overheads, it's enough to keep us hanging on. But they've done what best they could within the guidelines that they were being given by Westminster. All of the gammony twats that have been going, oh, Boris Johnson's doing so much of a better job. No, well, at least they won't shut up. I wish they would shut up.
No.
They won't shut up.
I've tried reasoning with some of these people. It sounds like you can't.
To be fair, neither will we shut up, though, so we are just as bad, but we're on the side of right. Which I imagine is exactly what they think. But yeah, it's to sort of hold off and swear blind you're not going to do it, and then do it. So much worse, guys. Then treat us like adults. Stop chopping and changing. Be strict. Do what you need to. Yes, it's going to be unpopular, but gives more people more time. Also helps businesses to plan for things. Allows people to sort of come up with some creative options for how they can do things differently. To just sort of do this at the 11th hour and just be like, yeah, like if you live in London or one of the Tier 4 areas, it comes into effect tomorrow. So they've said today. This affects you from tomorrow. Also, your Christmas is absolutely cancelled, by the way. You're not allowed to mix at all. Like, that, I'd be livid. We'd already changed our plans because we were being kind of cautious. And it felt like it was going that way anyway. So although it wasn't necessarily entirely legally obligated, we kind of just went, let's just let's just be sensible. I'll give you another example, actually. This evening, very allowable, because my parents' household is the household that we're bubbled with. So currently, until we go into full lockdown tier 4 on the 28th, we were allowed to go and mix in their house. So we were going to go over there for a takeaway this evening. But on rethinking it, I was just kind of like, and we did give it a lot of thought, and we sort of just went, sorry, there's some catty nonsense going on down there. Giving it a lot of thought, we just kind of went, do you know what, this close to Christmas, as much as we'd really like to go, because we're not going to be allowed to go soon, we just kind of thought, well, what happens if we go along tonight, and then tomorrow morning, one of us wakes up with a nasty cough, and we have to get COVID tested. That basically means we've scuppered everyone's Christmas, because everybody in that house will then have to self-isolate, and that's their Christmas ruined as well as our Christmas ruined. So we just kind of thought, let's not. Let's just be cautious, because better safe than sorry. And like, again, I don't want to look back on things and regret my behaviour, so that's kind of where we landed. But that's kind of how everybody needs to have been all this time, and just I'm getting so righteous and vitriolic about how many people who have just got to the who are just flouting the rules, and it's just like, this virus does not go away because you're fucked off. It just doesn't. And I do know people that previously taking it very seriously that have now just got to the stage where they're just doing whatever the fuck they like, and it's quite galling, because you're spending, like, literally, we probably chatted for about 45 minutes earlier about whether or not to go a 5-minute walk around the corner to be in my parents' house, which is within the rules, and we decided against it because better to be cautious. And then there's other people who are just having house parties and, you know,
and that's
acting like twats. So you're just like, I'm agonising over this. Could you maybe just fucking not?
And that's part of the thing that worries me about having to go on public transport or going to town, is that some people will be in the same shoes as myself, having to do it for work, but some people would just be doing that to go, oh, we'll just do a bit of Christmas shopping, or do, or like, well, this isn't, you know, do whatever they're doing, and like, those are the people who aren't taking things carefully, and those are the people I don't want to be in.
If you've got to be out mixing with people, you want it to be mixing with the people who've been largely cautious, but by default, the people who are out and mixing aren't the cautious ones.
And I bet there's a small bit of Boris Johnson.
I bet there's a small bit of Boris
Johnson. Just goes.
Sorry. It was too easy.
I bet there's a small bit of Boris Johnson deep down that goes, oh, this isn't, I don't like this. It's horrible being Prime Minister. It's horrible. I don't. Oh,
I hope there is.
It's not like when I was on Have I Got News for You, and everyone told me what a good job I did, and they were all laughing. It was lovely.
Yeah, it was a lot more fun.
That was a lot more fun. And do you know what, Boris? Because I know you watch these. Can you could have done that. That could have been your career. You could have been like a low-level MP who, like a backbencher, who kind of turns up on Have I Got News for You and things. You could have done, and people would have
had your Spectator column, took you 250 grand a year.
And, you know, you still would have been a cunt, but, like, people would have liked you when you were on the telly. You were, I hate to say this because I'm not your biggest fan, but you were entertaining. I'm not sure how much of it was deliberate, but you were entertaining on that show. But you didn't have to try and run the cunt. You don't have the skill set.
No.
You're not good at it.
No. I hope he regrets it. I hope he feels bad. I hope, because I don't think he really, like, sort of really empathetically gives a shit about how bad he's making people's lives. But I think he really does give a shit about, oh, I don't like it when people don't like me. So I hope that, if nothing else, keeps him up at night. But I doubt it. I don't think he gives enough of a shit about just about anything, really. I think he's a horrible person, and I hope he's miserable. But, you know, that's just me. It's just my opinion. Humble though it be. But yeah, so I don't know. Where do we go from there? What else is there? So perhaps it's time to sort of wrap that up and take a few days to absorb. So we don't know what's going to be happening with Chris and work, and if we're going full lockdown.
I think it's going to be. Well, I've had a message today we're still open tomorrow, so I think it's just going to be business as usual.
Well, what I'm hoping, fingers crossed, is maybe that it just goes really quiet and then they go to sort of more reduced hours like they did in the previous lockdown.
And I wish we hadn't mentioned the name of the company because, like, while I understand your point,
you can beep it out if you like.
I don't think my bosses will be keen that we're saying hopefully things go really quiet. They stop making money and they send you home.
We can beep it out.
It's fine. It's not gonna. I think people can understand the nuance of what we're saying. Is like
they're not like they're a business. They're doing what they can. Like there's no judgment, but it's just in terms of personal preference. If somehow Chris becomes off work, then we will. Well, I think we're going to. There's so much going on, and we do want to document it. That we're going to be doing these more regularly now. So strap in, guys.
Hey. And they won't all be as bleak as this one, hopefully.
You can't say that. You don't know.
I did say hopefully. Should we end on a positive?
Sure.
Have you got one?
No.
Oh, fuck. All right. I'll pull one out of my arse then. No, I have got a...
That was a bold punt if you didn't have one.
Because obviously when we were doing the lockdown vlogs before, it wasn't all just about statistics and politics and grimness. We used to talk about some of the special lockdown entertainment and some of the things that were happening. And a bit of positivity. There is going to be an end-of-year kind of review special. Yes. They're advertising it, but they're still making it, apparently. And it's from the creators of Black Mirror, which I think just means Charlie Brooker's done it, which I'm expecting like heavily kind of like his year review. If you saw his kind of lockdown wipe that he did, and
that was great.
And he's done annual reviews in the past and news wipe things, and very sardonic and funny, and lots of talking heads and kind of year in a review done in a very funny way. But it's hopefully going to be that kind of style. I don't know exactly what they're doing, but that's what I'm speculating.
Yeah,
but
that'll be good.
It's going to have talking heads in it, like kind of Samuel L. Jackson.
Oh.
And like that caliber of person appearing in it as talking heads, like big names. I can't remember. It was either Hugh Laurie or Hugh Grant, and I realise those are two very different people. But I just remember seeing a Hugh on
both
the trailer.
Both quite posh and British.
Yeah.
Posh British. Men of a certain age.
I would be happy to see either one in my end of year review.
Prefer Laurie, but would accept Grant.
Well, I'm going to say that in case, don't want to upset Hugh Grant.
It's been a tough year for everyone. I really fancy Hugh Laurie.
Do you?
Yeah.
Oh.
I think it was his house years that did it for me, but now he just does it for me.
What about when he's Prince George in Blackadder 3?
Less so.
Oh, okay.
Very much less so.
That is a shame.
Do you know what?
Because I can't really grow a facial hair like he has in house, but I feel like I could get hold of a powdered wig.
Yeah, you could do Prince George quite well, I think.
Well, that feels like a backhanded compliment after what you just said about not really fancying him.
I think Hugh Laurie's aged into himself very well because I think as he sort of
fingers crossed for me then,
got a bit rugged as he's got older in quite an appealing way.
I look very young for my age. I might never age into myself.
But I didn't. It's not just as Prince George, sort of actually in the sort of a bit of like old Jeeves and Worcester and a bit of Fry and Laurie. I didn't fancy him then either, but I do fancy him now. I think there's the greying and slightly haggard. So I've got the youngest looking husband I could find, and turns out my type is haggard. So it's all right. I'll work on haggering you.
Yeah, great.
Love you. He's still my favourite.
Oh dear. Right.
So on that bombshell.
Someone's set out a determination to rapidly age me. So we've probably got that to get on with. I don't know. We should probably go. So you can start.
Just stress you out a bit more.
Don't worry. This year might have done it.
Yeah, but if we're still doing, we might still be doing lockdown vlogs next Christmas. Let's see.
You did say the other day you'd look back at like an early one we'd done. You said, "Have we aged this year?" And I realised I feel like I still look quite young. But people always tell me I look young. They always think I'm really young, and the main difference is when I actually was young, I was so much slimmer.
Me too.
I was so skinny. But anyway.
Oh, somebody at our door.
So
we're going to call it a day there. We don't know who that is. All right. So, bye guys.
Like and subscribe.
There's no
shame in it.
There's no shame in it. And we'll be back soon.